appreciate that a channel is open through you with a larger group, a larger team that has a range of expertise. Very little, actually. For some years, I've searched Google every now and then for decentralized graph database, something like that. Things that come up in response to that. And only in the last month or so did I come up with a link that directed me to Wikidata. Maybe about 15 years ago, I did help edit some articles at Wikipedia. I did that for a while. And after a while, I felt like, well, I've done some contribution to that. And so I didn't touch it for a while. And so I've kind of gotten out of touch. Of course, I'm using Wikipedia frequently, very often. It's one of the resources that comes up, but I was not aware about Wikidata. I only recently created an account there and then entered an item for myself, added some properties for myself to see how that works. And I was trying to use my phone to do that. And that's where I encountered right away that the interface is not designed for mobile devices like phones. There are some command items on the screen you simply do not see through the phone interface, such as to add statements. You can create an item, but you can't add statements through the phone. So then I'm using my phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot to connect my laptop computer to the internet. So then I could add statements and edit an item. That was my first encounter. Well, in some ways, this is not making it possible because the phone may be the most ubiquitous computing device now. There are more people in the world who have smartphones than any other single kind of computing device. That's the way. Getting going with Wikidata then led me to Wikibase. And one other thing with Wikidata, even when I'm using my laptop computer and I can see the item for add statement, that's a complex thing also in itself. There are forms on the screen. So you get a drop-down list of properties that you might use, such as birth date or so on. But it doesn't give a sample of what format to enter the date. I had to try a number of times. Oh, it's day, month, year to get that right. And then these that I added, there were little flags or notices saying, well, this doesn't match this constraint and this doesn't match. And I'm trying to enter things according to the drop-down prompts and so on to what seems to make the most sense. And yet I was getting these alerts that this isn't exactly the correct format or property. And so I was kind of afraid to go too far into it. Not really. It did not provide a suggestion. This is maybe what you want to do instead. When I go to my item in Wikidata using my phone, it displays, okay, I don't see all the alerts and things that I see from my laptop computer. So they're more encouraging. It looks proper when I access it from my phone. So I learned that Wikibase is the underlying graph database software on which Wikidata is built. And this seemed like, well, maybe that is the answer that I've been looking for some years, some decentralized graph database. You know, I'd heard about SPARQL going back some years, but I never really investigated it that much. The query language part is clear in the name of the acronym, but the P, I didn't realize, well, that's for protocol. And so it's built into the SPARQL language, a protocol for connecting one Wikibase with another Wikibase. It becomes a way of multiplying the resources that are available from any point of contact. It's great. So I found there's a wikibase.world website, someone who's promoting Wikibases. And at that website, there was mention of wikibase.cloud. And so I went there and I created an instance of a Wikibase, which is, by the way, where I saw the notice about the interviews taking place. There was and that's where I responded and said, yes, I would be happy to participate in the survey. So I guess a couple of reasons why I want to install it on my phone. One is, if this is a problem in itself, this hierarchical centralized structure of power, then it seems in the course of creating a new structure that the information infrastructure itself would best be decentralized. So this kind of a ubiquitous device is something that seems well suited for that. So the phone I'm using for the video conference now is the phone I used on a daily basis. This is a Samsung Galaxy A20 that I'm using Google Meet on right now. It has 3 gigabytes of RAM. It works just fine for video conferencing and watching YouTube videos and all the normal things you want to do, but it's not going to work very well for running a local language model, machine learning model, database or something. So I bought a OnePlus 11 smartphone last year, 2023. This phone has 16 gigabytes of RAM. Remarkable to me that a handheld device can have 16 gigabytes of RAM. So this is enough. So decentralizing the structure of information in order to help decentralize the structure of power. We don't want to be dependent on centralized authority, but also if my old phone is just sitting, not being used part of the day, it's not that much of a computing device to sit idly for a while. But when you start getting into devices like this that have way more processing capacity, for it to just sit idle most of the time is a waste of a resource. So I want to install software on it that will be connecting and be part of a global platform all the time. So it was just last week, I think it was, that in order to install Wikibase, well, first of all, because it's an Android phone, under the hood here, it's running Linux. That's Android. And so there is an app called Termux with the command line interface that Linux programmers are familiar with to type in commands. And first of all, I had to install Termux. And then I could install PHP, which is required for Wikibase, and also Apache 2, the web server, which is required for Wikibase, and then also the MariaDB database required as well. And then there's also MediaWiki that has to be installed because Wikibase uses all those other applications. And at almost every step of the way, there's some problem. There's Well, you have to have this other thing set up or installed to get that to work right. And very often, searching, Googling, this is the problem. And then you find people who've had similar problems before. They've posted questions, other people have responded. Very often the answers are there. And so you're working back and forth, installing, finding out what you did wrong, what to correct it. And I got as far as MediaWiki was installed. And the first time I went to access the web page that showed it's running, it says, if you're seeing this, it means you probably don't have PHP enabled in your Apache web server. So you got to do that first. And then there are answers and questions on the internet to try to help you get that stuff. And I tried following those instructions, and that's where I got stuck. There was something, maybe because the interface on my phone is limiting, or maybe because Termux on Linux doesn't work exactly like Linux on a desktop or a laptop. There was something that hung up. That's where I stopped. That's where I gave up. I never got Wikibase installed on the phone because I didn't get all those required preliminaries in place. I tried, how many times did Thomas Edison fail before he found a filament for a light bulb that would work? You have to try in order to get anywhere. And it's a learning experience. And so I could offer a solution. Somebody who's actually more technologically adept than I am. I'm more of a dreamer. And I do this stuff because I want to realize the dream. But there are millions of people in the world who really have better technical skills than I have. So somebody who will go through it and get it to work and create a script, create a little install app that does it. You just click on a link on an icon on the internet, and it does it all. That's what I want. Install the whole thing. Yes. Now that leads us to another area. Wikibase itself, and this is kind of like Wikidata itself. I've read some tutorials on the SPARQL language. It's good to have some idea of it. I'm not going to become fluent in SPARQL. I would maybe copy and paste if I needed to enter a SPARQL command myself, but really a form on the screen where if you're entering some person's information, there's a field for name and a field for other items that you want to get into this Wikibase. And behind the scenes, there are scripts that take the form information and do it. That's a usable way to do it. Wikidata is kind of missing the mark for me in some ways. And so I think even if I had succeeded in installing Wikibase on my phone, I would be at a loss. Now, what do I do? How do I use it? I've done web-based databases before with PHP and HTML. You can put the form on the screen and the background instructions that add records and update records in a database, but I don't know how to do that with Wikibase. I can think of two that I would like to create or cooperate with others in creating. And the one that I already created at wikibase.cloud is named Master Debater. I am aware of a data set called Open Debate Evidence, created by a researcher named Alan Rausch. It consists of 3 million documents of transcripts from formal debates, like high school and college debate teams getting together over years. These documents have been collected by Alan Rausch, along with the metadata of the schools that participated and when the debates took place and so on. Also, the references that were provided by the debate teams to support the arguments that they're making in their debates. It's a tremendous resource. So to get that uploaded into a Wikibase as a starting point to fill out, there are all these different topics that have been debated. There are all these arguments that have been presented. There are all these references to evidence to support. That would be a tremendous place to start, just to get started. Well, beyond that, then, I think we would want some kind of a bot application that could trace through all of the references that are made in that data set to see, is it a live, active reference? First of all, to make references work. The second thing would be, and maybe you need some kind of a language model along with the bot that's going to the references, is to see, is the claim that's made in the argument actually supported by this reference? Does the reference say the same thing that the person who's arguing claimed it said in the debate? Maybe it doesn't. And then the bot, if it's doing that, it can then come up with its own research. It can come up with more search terms to look for more evidence that supports or refutes the arguments that are being made in these debates, and it's creating items in the knowledge graph. It's expanding, it's growing the Wikibase with more items and more properties and linking it all together and calculating weights. How confident are we, after all this information, all this evidence, are we that this argument is correct, is valid or not? And the final thing is, there needs to be an interface for people to interact with it also, for human feedback, for ongoing. It's not just digital intelligence, it's human and digital intelligence working synergistically to come up with this whole, which is greater than the sum of the parts. Because what the digital intelligence is contributing is different from what the human intelligence is. It's diversity that makes the whole greater than the sum of the parts. It's a synergy that creates something greater than anything on its own. Personally speaking, I like to do fact checking. So to keep myself grounded in the truth as much as possible, I want to fact check. I will debate with this master debater that hopefully will grow to something that actually is superhuman in ability. It will have access to the libraries of information and knowledge, plus all the interaction with the hopefully millions and billions of people around the world who are interacting and checking and correcting. That will be like the best resource we need to get our minds in a correct space. Well, at the risk of being political, we live in the world, and this is the reality. There seems to be a large percent of the population in the United States. Let's just pick on our own country here, where I'm a citizen of the United States, although I actually feel more like a citizen of planet Earth. My identity as a whole, I'm a citizen of planet Earth, because things are messed up in the United States. I mean, how many millions of people actually have swallowed the lies that the last presidential election was stolen from Donald Trump, his claims of massive fraud, that the evidence was never presented in court. You have to have evidence. But there are millions of people who believe that. There were thousands of people who attacked the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., when the Constitution says Congress is supposed to count the electoral vote. I mean, that's an insurrection. That's an attempted coup. And there are millions of people who participated in that because they've swallowed the lie. Whether it's that or global warming, whatever else it is, there is an objective, empirical, verifiable reality to the universe and the world in which we live. And the outcomes of our lives will be much better if we're grounded in the truth. Yeah, as you were saying, that there are other ways of knowing the world and other traditions, indigenous societies, oral tradition societies, that just adds to the value. Again, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts because the parts are different perspectives and ways. In fact, I saw a recent YouTube presentation, people talking about the cryosphere and how the effects of putting massive quantities of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere by burning mass quantities of fossil fuels is being felt by people in far northern latitudes more. And there was somebody from an indigenous society who's saying, you know, we experience the world in a different way, and it's very much of a hands-on direct. This is how we know the world, is how we interact with it physically. And this is what I can say and share about what's changing in the world. That's critical to get included, that other perspective on things, along with the scientists who are drilling the ice core samples. One of the other things that's so much in the news these days, if attention comes to machine learning and artificial intelligence at all, it's going to kill us all. It's going to mean the end of humanity. It's another one of these existential risks we're bringing into the world. Well, I think Jan LeCun, as one of the spokespeople out of the machine learning field, has some good thoughts to say about that. But my own comment is in terms of a knowledge base and a superhuman level of software that can respond to human interactions. Is we don't need artificial general intelligence for that. We're talking about database software, knowledge bases. This is mature stuff. We just need to use what we already have and maybe add on a speech recognition as an interface on the phone. So if it's difficult to touch the keyboard on the screen, if you can talk to it, a speech recognition model or something. But we don't need artificial general intelligence. Things ultimately do reach a level where there is a digital intelligence that in general ways it learns it as it's going along at a superhuman rate. It can do so many things. Well, the risk very much comes in terms of the human side of it, learning from us. What kind of behavior are we modeling? What kind of a world are we bringing this new creation, this new digital intelligence into? The way the world works now, again, according to this, and it's dog eat dog, and people get smashed down and their faces ground into the dirt all the time. Well, there's a different way. In fact, if we want to alleviate the risk of some evil artificial intelligence crushing, suppressing, killing humans, we need to get in touch with some good principles ourselves. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Earth Charter have very good principles. If we were looking for examples of human intelligence, the principles in those two documents are just beautiful. They're just beautiful and precious. So to the extent that now, before we bring this artificial general intelligence in the world, we get our act together and we create a system that is responsive and caring about human beings, about other species, and about this emerging intelligence. We need to care about it if we want it to care about us. The general context for the more specific second idea, and this again is just, we're talking database technology. This does not require rocket science or something, but a real-time census of humanity with measures for health and well-being for everyone who's alive right now. I mean, from the moment of birth at a clinic or wherever, that on that day, there's a record into this real-time census. Here's a child that's been born. Does this child, this baby, have the resources that it needs to have a healthy life? And we get that in, and any instance in the world where someone does not have what they need for an adequate standard of living, well, that's a flag. That needs some attention to get some resources going there. A real-time census of humanity. Yes, yes. Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for their health and well-being. We're talking adequate. We don't want everyone to get into the palace. We just want everybody to get out of the gutter. We can at least do that. And so if we have a real-time census of humanity and we have an authoritative record, these are people, the property of instance of human. Here is an instance of a human. It's not about, if we have an election, this person has a right to vote and to vote once and not 100 times with fraudulent ballots, one vote per person on a global basis. Can we collect a global collective democracy? Can we create a global collective democracy at the same time we're creating a global platform for collective human and digital intelligence? Something that just takes us to a completely higher level, all of us together at the same time, moving together and protecting other species and future generations, because it's the intelligent thing to do, and the intelligent thing to do is the caring thing to do. Take care. Installing a Wikibase on my phone, I was thinking I might really want to have two instances of Wikibase running on my phone. One would be a private graph. This is stuff that I read, websites that I visit, and so on, what I do with my device, and private, and the system is protecting my right to privacy. There's another graph, another Wikibase that I would like to run that would be a public. These are things, this is something I want to say to the World Assembly. And then my the digital agent that's running in my phone also can connect that item in my public Wikibase graph bases around the world. That becomes distributed. It's part of the whole. Even to bring it specifically, I appreciate your bringing it up, how the census is used in the United States. The United States is the first country in the world with a written constitutional form of government. And the Constitution says something about there will be a census taken every 10 years. Why? Because we need to know how many representatives, how many members of Congress there will be proportion to the different states. It's based on the population, and you need a census in order to actualize this form of government that's being created out of nothing in 1787 or so on. Yeah, so today we're creating a global structure. We need to know how many people there are. We need to be able to verify that each person is a person, because we're all going to participate. We're all citizens of planet Earth. We're all going to participate, and it needs to be done in a fair and above board way. And then there's also Article 21 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that protects the person's right to a secret ballot. It's you need to protect people from retaliation for voting a way that other people may not like the way you vote. So you have a secret ballot. So the cloud is fine. It can be, again, a blend, a hybrid. Maybe a year or two from now, there will be phones on the market with 24 gigabytes of RAM, and then another 2 or so years, maybe 32 or 60. You wrote up a report on interviews that you're conducting, and you shared the report with people who are interested in this, and they have resources. They've demonstrated that. Wikimedia Deutschland is that they kind of they carried the ball to get things started. Data with Wikidata, yes, and so that this process of interviews and surveys is happening now is an indication that people are aware. Maybe we are at a transition point. Maybe then another thing that's going to happen here is, and Denny Vrandachik, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He did this brilliant 28-minute video titled "The Future of Knowledge Graphs in a World of Large Language Models." He's got the vision so well that, maybe we don't need these 100 billion parameter language models to provide the interface. We need an interface between the person and the computer, and maybe a smaller language model that's fine-tuned for recognizing entities and relationships and things people say or text and images, and can create the SPARQL queries to update and retrieve from a graph database. The interface that can be portable on a phone for people who don't even want to try touching the screen in the right place, that still needs to be, that still works. So we don't want to throw away things that work, but a new level of interface, language independent. You say what you have in your mind, and the computer is able to deal with that. That's the thing that really needs, and it feels like we're at the threshold of this happening. I feel very satisfied, complete, happy, really. I was kind of nervous before I started because it's important. It's really important. And it's, but I kind of trusted, well, the whole reason for doing these interviews, it's right on and it's good. And so I'm just pleased. I feel just privileged